All right, I think we're live. I'm not sure if anyone is on the other side yet, but I guess we'll just get started since I know that some people watch these Facebook Lives retroactively. So, hello everyone. My name is Haleema, and I am a 2016 Schulich leader at the University of Toronto who just graduated this year. Awesome, I see it's working. Um, so I just graduated this year from the Neuroscience, Psychology, and Physiology programs at U of T. So I can talk a little bit about those. And in my undergrad, I was involved in various extracurricular and curricular activities. So I took part in student governance at U of T, both at the local level within my college. So if you're not familiar, U of T is broken up into colleges within the Faculty of Arts and Science. And so I was a part of Victoria College, and I got to get myself involved in the Victoria College student government body. And I also got to be a part of the University of Toronto Students' Union, which is a student government body that oversees the larger student body at U of T. And other than that, for curricular involvements, I was a part of 3 research opportunities. So my first research opportunity was in 2018, the summer of 2018. I got to be a part of a psychology research lab at Harvard University, where we were investigating infant cognition as it relates to transitive inference tasks. And then I was also part of a psychology lab at U of T, as well as a bioengineering lab related to lungs and the trachea specifically at U of T. And then in terms of side projects, I've been able to I received a summer company grant in the summer of 2017. So I guess after my first year it was. And I started a face painting business called Fantasy Face Painting, and I would go to various events in the Niagara region, which is where I'm from, as well as Toronto, and do face painting events. And I was also I just recently I started a campaign called Creating for COVID, where I use digital art to raise funds towards food banks in Niagara Falls and Toronto to support to alleviate food insecurity for people who are struggling through COVID. And in terms of just like part-time jobs, I guess, I was a U of T tour guide for 2 years in my third and fourth year. So I can talk about all of those things at any point along this AMA. So feel free to ask any questions. Um, so I guess I was sent some questions while we're waiting for questions to roll in. I was sent some questions before starting this, so I can answer some of the questions that I already have. I made some notes. So I can start with when did you know you wanted to pursue a career in your current discipline? So as I said, well, I just graduated from the neuroscience, psychology, and physiology programs at U of T. But in terms of just science in general, I guess there wasn't really like a defining moment in my life where I knew I wanted to pursue science. It was just kind of as I went along my education from, elementary school to middle school to high school, I just realized that I liked the courses in sciences more than I liked the courses in like arts or humanities, for instance. But I always had a soft spot for art, as you can see through my face painting business and my digital art campaign. Like I've always kind of pursued art as a side hobby, but I knew my main passion was definitely geared towards science. Sciences and maths, actually. And I guess specifically for neuroscience, it wasn't until my first year actually that I didn't know that I wanted to pursue neuroscience. So it was so at U of T at least, the first year in the life sciences program is quite broad, and you get to select courses from all sorts of disciplines as long as they meet prerequisites for whatever programs you want to enroll in for second year. So I enrolled in a first year psychology program or first year psychology course, and there was a pretty significant neuroscience component in that course, which really attracted me. And so I decided to enroll into the neuroscience program at U of T. And then Along with that, I added a psychology major. So I'm double majored in neuroscience and psychology since first year. And in my second year, I took a physiology course. Or actually, no, it was in my, I think it was, no, it was in my second year that I took a third year physiology course. And U of T allows a lot of flexibility in terms of which programs you want to pursue, especially in the arts, in the Faculty of Arts and Science. So what I decided was I love that physiology course, and the concepts were so interesting to me, combining the different areas of the human body and kind of learning about them in such a comprehensive way. I never really got to do that in high school. So I really wanted to pursue a physiology minor. So I was able to add that on halfway through my degree, which was pretty awesome that I got to do that. But I kind of am still finding out where I belong in this world of science. So it's really just been a learning experience from day one, really. So still learning, but it's like the small things I've been picking up along the way have kind of helped me get a closer idea of what I really want to do and where I fit in this world of science, as I said. Um, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask at any point. Um, Meanwhile, I'll just keep answering the ones that I kind of have written down from earlier. So in terms of research experiences, I can touch on those because I've been a part of three different research labs at U of T, well, two at U of T and one at Harvard. So I'll talk a little bit about those for this next part. Um, so in terms of research, I guess my first experience was in 2018. So that was after my second year. And so basically, I knew that I really wanted to pursue research kind of geared towards neuroscience and psychology. So I decided to apply to a psychology lab at Harvard. And basically, what happened with that was I honestly, I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into, to be honest. But I knew it was kind of geared towards what I was studying. So I thought, I thought it would be a little bit easier to grasp than maybe something in like maths or statistics or something like that. But I was fortunate to be a part of the lab. And basically, what happened was at the lab, they pair you with a mentor in the lab who's a postdoc or a PhD student. And so through that, you get to work really closely with someone who's older than you and kind of follow their path a little bit. So that lab was mainly geared towards psychology. It was a dry lab, so it was mainly geared towards psychology instead of like the hard neuroscience stuff that I'd been learning. But it really allowed me to get a sense of what research was like. And from then, I pursued a research opportunity at U of T in the memory lab. Sorry, I just want to make sure. Am I lagging? I think it's fine. But someone let me know if I'm lagging. But at U of T, I pursued another psych lab. And then in my final year at U of T, I got involved in a bioengineering lab, which is very different from what I had been kind of used to in the other research involvements, but it really allowed me to, sorry, I have something in my throat. Let me just get some water for a sec. So with the bioengineering lab, I realized that you don't have to, the research area you're studying in, at least in undergrad, it doesn't have to specifically pertain to your area of study. For instance, a lot of the skills I gained in the previous two psychology labs were very transferable, even in this new bioengineering environment. So there was a lot of flexibility there, and I could navigate it how I wanted to, kind of. So I see a question from Danny. So Danny asks, has there ever been a time where you needed to combine your art interests with your science interests, or do you have any ideas on how you could do that at some point? So that's a great question. And so in terms of combining my art interests and science interests, I don't think there has been a point up until now. I think art has always allowed me to, it's always in my mind, I've always kind of separated the realms of art and science. So for me, it's always been something I've pursued along the side if I ever needed a break from, studying neuroscience, for instance. So I've kind of liked to, I liked to compartmentalize those two aspects of my life, but I think moving forward, art allows for a lot of creativity that sometimes I feel missing in what I study in science, and I think I can really use that to my advantage in my further research pursuits or what have you. And specifically now, in terms of, for instance, like the COVID situation we're finding ourselves in, I wasn't sure how I could contribute as in science, for instance. So I really wanted to, because obviously I'm not a frontline worker or anything like that, but I really wanted to use my creativity because I found myself, going to my sketchbook and my laptop a lot more to draw digitally and on paper. So I really wanted to use my creativity and art to help, for instance, the COVID situation and our healthcare situation right now. So I've kind of mostly compartmentalized those, but I guess the only bridge I've made is right now with my Creating for COVID campaign, really. And so, okay, I see another question coming in from Sidra. So she's asking, what are your next steps going forward after undergrad? Are there certain factors that influenced you towards these choices? So that's an awesome question. And I actually just decided this last week. So you're very on top of it, Sidra. But basically, I have decided to enroll into McGill's bioengineering program for September. It's a bioengineering master's program, so it's a 2-year program. And what kind of led me towards this was mainly where the research I was involved in was going in the last 2 years of my life. So basically, as I said, I was involved in a memory lab and a bioengineering lab. And in both labs, what I found was that technology was really seeping into everything we were doing in our research. Um, and it was, engineering and technology has always kind of seeped its way into my research pursuits, even in the lab at Harvard, for instance. So I really felt that I could contribute a lot more if I was to pursue something in engineering, for instance. And the reason I say that is because I really feel like engineering and technology allows you to gain a lot of problem solving skills and to find those novel solutions to challenges you're facing in healthcare or medicine or what have you. So that kind of is why I decided to pursue that specific program, and I'm really excited about it. So I hope to keep you all updated with the research I conduct there. And actually, more specifically, my research is going to be along the lines of neuroscience. So combining my interests in neuroscience and healthcare along with engineering and technology. So it's kind of like a intersection between these various disciplines. So I'm really excited about it, and I think it'll provide me with a lot of skills that will be useful in my future career, whether it's in research or medicine or somewhere else in healthcare. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm headed for the next foreseeable future. So I don't see any more questions coming in yet. So I'll answer another one of the questions I had from earlier. So another question I was prompted with was, do you have advice for students interested in pursuing research? And so I do have a lot of advice for research opportunities. So I remember, I think it was in first year that I was like, I didn't really know what research was going into undergrad, but it was a little bit intimidating being a first year and kind of emailing professors and, other labs and things like that to find opportunities. But I think a really great piece of advice that one of my professors in first year told me was to sell yourself as someone who has the potential to stay in the lab. So a lot of people might think that, being in third or fourth year provides you an advantage if you're interested in research, because you would have had a lot of experience by then. But actually, even as a first year, you can bring a lot to the lab if you kind of show an interest and a commitment to stay if you enjoy the research beyond the time that you're there. So I really think that there is a little bit of an intimidating aspect, and there seems to be a big power imbalance as well. But it's really important to realize your own value when you're reaching out to professors and research labs and kind of digging a little bit deeper and finding out what you can contribute. And, as I said earlier, you don't have to apply to labs that necessarily fit perfectly in your niche or discipline. A lot of the times in research, what I found is that research is very specific. Even in my psych labs, even though they were closely related to what I was studying, the research was very specific and related towards memory and memory consolidation and, transitive inferences, which I hadn't really studied and discovered or learned about really. But as I said before, there's a lot of transferable skills and value to gain from research. So I think that you can really, sell yourself in that way. If you're interested in learning, if you're interested in staying potentially beyond the time that you're there, the professor or lab might really be interested in having you as a student in their lab. So I see a question coming in from Ellie. So Ellie asks, what advice would you give to other students wanting to pursue research in a lab regarding applications, cold emails, etc.? What are some tips for getting selected, being a good contributor to a research lab environment? So I feel like I've already touched upon that, but I can expand a little bit more. So as I said, your research doesn't have to fit in line with what you're studying. Reaching out to profs can be scary, but you got to realize your own value and what you can bring to the lab. And in terms of standing out and being a good contributor to the lab, in most of my interviews with research profs, the main thing I realized that they've been interested in is my enthusiasm and my willingness to be there rather than the skills I had to offer. And a lot of the times, I was still learning. For instance, my first lab at U of T, my memory lab, it was the first time I was really getting involved in research at U of T, and it was in my third year. So I hadn't gained a lot of the skills that people in the lab had, built up for a long time, but my enthusiasm and my willingness to learn really showed through, and I think that's what really convinced them that I would be a good fit for the lab. And then in terms of regarding applications and cold emails, so this is kind of scary because it can be very discouraging to have to email profs to find research opportunities because, a lot of profs are very busy, a lot of labs are very busy. They might not get to your emails right away. They might not respond at all. And it's a very long process and it takes a lot of perseverance. And especially now as I've gone through the process for my grad school applications, I really found the same is true even at this stage in my life. So you really just gotta keep trying and keep pushing and go back to the drawing board if you realize your attempts aren't working. In terms of cold emails, one strategy that I've really found to be effective is to keep it short. I know that the advice varies though. But what's worked for me is to keep my emails short and to the point and kind of allow them an opportunity to get to know you more or elaborate on whatever points you've made in the email, or a phone call or a video call or in person. And the reason I say that is because what you can say over like 10 paragraphs of text, you can get across in like a 10-minute video call or a 10-minute phone call. And it's just about the value of time and, respecting the prof's time, respecting your own time, and, kind of getting your message across in the most effective way possible. And I've also realized that in terms of cold emails, sometimes it actually helps to reach out to like profs who have connections. So, for example, when I was applying to my the memory lab at U of T, I had one of my psychology professors who I really got along with well. I would often approach for questions about future psychology courses to take and career advice. And I asked them, if they knew of any profs in the department who were currently recruiting applicants to their lab. And he bridged that connection between myself and the supervisor who ended up being my supervisor for my thesis project. And so basically finding those connections really helps, and making, even if there isn't an opportunity there, at least you've made the connection and one thing can lead to the next. So I really tried to utilize my network in that way. Because it can be really scary to reach out to people you don't even know or don't have any kind of link with, for sure. And then I hope I've answered all of your points, Ellie, but if you have any follow-ups, let me know. And I'm happy to answer any of if Danny or Sidra, if you guys have any follow-up questions, let me know as well. I'm happy to expand on what I've said. Just gonna get some water. All right. So I'm not seeing any more questions come in yet. So I'm going to see if I can answer any of these other questions that I had written from earlier. So actually, I want to give advice to people navigating a bigger school or bigger university like U of T. Something that I just want to share some things I've learned over the 4 years I've been there. So there are, so obviously university is a big space as it is, and a U of T is especially big, and it's a very intimidating environment. So when I've been talking about emailing professors and making these cold emails, but in terms of navigating the bigger university environment, I've realized the importance of advocating for yourself. University is so different from high school in that you don't really have people to kind of um, push you along your path. You have to really realize what your needs are and advocate for yourself, whether that's finding research opportunities or finding help, whether it's for your personal health or mental health. A lot of the change comes from yourself, and I realize that a lot of the change within universities comes from the students and a push from the students. And change takes a long time, and there's a lot of red tape, but it's really important to realize the value that your voice has, and really just stick to what you know and advocate for yourself. So I'm going to share a couple of experiences that I've had where I really found this to be true. And the first one is where, like, this is such a small scale experience, but I just thought it was valuable to share because it really debunked a lot of my myths that I had going into university. So the first story I want to share is asking for changes in midterm dates. So I remember going into my 4th year. In first semester, I had 4 midterms that landed within like 2 days or something like that, and I barely had like 24 hours to study for all of them. Like, it was just a very cramped timeline. And I didn't have a good reason to ask for a change in my schedule, really, because these classes are still pretty big. And it just seemed like, for whatever reason, it just seemed like my voice wouldn't be taken into consideration, or there wouldn't be a lot of importance attributed to my personal circumstances. But I gave it a shot, and I emailed 2 of the professors and I just explained my situation, saying like, hey, I've been kind of stressed out about these upcoming midterms, and there isn't like an extenuating circumstance that's preventing me from preparing for these or studying for these. I'm just a little bit stressed out about how close they are temporally. And to my surprise, the professors were extremely understanding, and they said, you know what, you can come into my office hours the following week and you can write them then. So I was honestly super surprised about that, and I wish I had kind of tried that earlier, because there have been so many times where I've been handing things under pressure, or I've been studying for things with a lot of other commitments on the side, and it's just taken away from studying for midterms or tests or preparing for assignments. So I wish I had realized that sooner, that you can really, voice your own needs and just give it a shot. You don't know what they're going to say, but it's worth trying. And in my experience, it was successful. And then the second time that I realized the importance of advocating for yourself was making a change on one of my marks, that a final mark that I received. So I had taken a course in the winter semester, and it was fall by the time I decided to, see if my mark was accurate. The reason I waited so long was because I was away for the summer, and it was just, there were a lot of logistical constraints. But I remember a lot of people telling me that if your marks are final on this website called Acorn, it's almost impossible to get them changed. And, I felt for that for a long time, but then I realized, what's the harm in trying? So I think it was the fall semester that I went to go review my exam from the previous semester, from the winter semester. And I realized they'd made a mistake. And I wasn't, it was, it was hard for me to believe at first, and I had to double check a million times to make sure that didn't really make sense, double checking a million times. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I was right, because it's hard to kind of make a claim that you're not really sure of yourself. So I checked and I confirmed with some of my friends, and they were like, no, you're right. So I emailed the department and I explained them the situation and what I thought was wrong in the exam. And so what happened was my final mark on Acorn ended up being changed, but because the way this exam was structured, the final mark for about half of the class was also changed, just because of me taking that step to kind of address what was wrong in the exam. So, and a lot of my friends, well, the people I knew who I told about me, telling the department about this mistake, a lot of my friends reached out saying hey, that was really cool, and we didn't know you could do that, but I guess, there's no harm in trying. But that's just a second experience of advocating for yourself and really sticking with your gut, and not really falling into the myths of that past years or people may have told you about how hard it is to find the changes that you want to see. So, sorry, those are long stories, but I see Sidhara's question. So off topic, but what do you like to do in your free time? And how are you keeping busy during COVID? I love these questions. That's so nice. So, as I said before, I've been drawing a ton. So I've been creating lots of different digital drawings for my friends and family and people who've been donating to my campaign. So so for whoever doesn't know, I started a digital drawing campaign called Creating for COVID. And so I was getting a lot of requests for, let me kind of explain this a little bit better. I have some pictures of the drawings I've made on my Instagram, which I can show you. But basically, I've been drawing for a long time, since December, I think, digitally on this platform called Autodesk Sketchbook. And more recently, because of quarantine, a lot of people have been asking me to, draw pictures for their, for instance, for their mom's birthday, or, a family event, or a portrait of them and their friends. And so I've been getting a lot of requests like that. So I thought it would be very useful to start a campaign where I could raise funds towards food banks in Niagara Falls and Toronto. And so I've been getting a lot of requests for that, and it's been a blast, because it's doing what I love, but it also feels very useful and important to help the the current circumstance. So let me show you. So this is a picture of my brother. This is a picture of his prom, from his prom that he wanted me to draw. I can show you a couple others. So this is one of my best friends. She has like a makeup business and she wanted kind of like a thumbnail picture for her business page. And let me see if there's another cool one. This is another one of my friends. She's a huge fan of Post Malone, so she wanted a picture of her and Post Malone digitally drawn. I don't know if you can see that, but if you want to check them all out, you can find them on my haleema.creates Instagram page, so feel free to check it out if you're interested. But I've been drawing a lot there. And what else have I been doing? So I've been exercising a ton. I feel like I'm really just doing things that I've neglected during undergrad. So I've been exercising a ton. I've been watching a ton of movies, finally catching up on books. I'm trying to really diversify the content I consume. So if any of you have like book suggestions, I would love that. I've been trying to get into more um, books written by Black authors, podcasts by Black Black producers. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I'm really trying to diversify the content I consume. If you have great movie suggestions, let me know. I'm just trying to kind of keep myself busy and entertained in any way I can. But yeah, those are the main things I've been doing. I've been reading Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, which has been really good so far. But yeah, other than that, I can't really think of anything particularly. Oh, I've been baking a ton. I made like chicken stuffed bread a couple weeks back. I made some wontons, tacos, just like a bunch of random things that I've been meaning to try for a while, but I just never got the chance to, and it didn't. It seemed like now was the perfect time to do those things. So yeah. So I realize we're past the 30-minute mark. And so if you have any last questions, let me know. Otherwise, I can say some final comments and kind of start winding this down. Actually, since I've been talking about, since I just mentioned Michelle Obama's book, I read a really great quote in that book, and I think it kind of relates to this Facebook Live. So in her book, she writes, as a child, she was often asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm sure a lot of us have been asked that, and I'm sure we're still being asked that because we're still in our education. But what her thoughts were on that question was, it's a lot of people have this perception that growing up is this like finite thing and that there's like a ceiling to what you can achieve, but really you can go through many different experiences and many different careers in your life, and you don't really have to put a barrier on what you can achieve. And I really like that because there's really no end to your process of becoming. And I really felt like that sat very well with me as I'm finishing my final year of undergrad, and I still don't have a perfect picture of what I want to do. But I think that's kind of the process of it. Like, I think that it's very important to give yourself the space to try new things and give yourself the freedom to be okay with mistakes. And life is really like an experiment. As silly as it sounds, it is really like a research experiment. You test out different things, you have trials and errors, and you realize what you've learned through those experiments, and you test a new hypothesis. So it's very serendipitous, as if you can say that, to have so many research experiences and still be going through trials and errors in my personal life. So yeah, I think that might be a good message to end this Facebook Live on, unless anyone has any last questions. But if you don't, or if something comes up later, you're always welcome to message me on Facebook. because I'm in this Schulich network, or if you have any other ways you want to communicate with me, please let me know. I'm really happy to answer any questions and kind of continue this tradition that the Schulich network has of, passing on past knowledge and helping people who are going into where you are now. But thank you everyone for hanging out with me on this Saturday evening or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I was able to provide some helpful advice and answers to your questions. But other than that, I wish you a great rest of your evening, and I hope to be in touch soon. All right. Thank you, everyone. Oh, okay, I'm seeing, sorry. Nope, I'm not done yet. I'm seeing one question from Angela Choi. What was something you struggled in your first years at university? Sorry for the last minute question. Don't worry at all. So one thing I struggled with was, there were a lot of things I struggled with, but one thing that stands out in particular is meeting the high standard. So I think for me, for me, high school was a lot easier to grasp than university was, for a lot of reasons. Obviously, one of the reasons is because you're in a pool of like-minded people, high achievers, students who have strong work ethic, and kind of keeping up with that was very challenging. And another thing was meeting the standard. So I realized that professors in university set a really high standard than a lot of the teachers that I had in high school. I don't know if that's the same across the board, but it was in my experience at least. So meeting that high standard that they set was kind of challenging because I had to kind of adapt to a new way of learning and attaining knowledge. And how I kind of overcame that was finding people who were kind of in the same boat as me and seeking advice from upper years. So I really valued how in the Schulich network we have the mentorship program, and through that I was able to find an upper year in the life sciences program at U of T, John, and he was awesome. He gave me a lot of advice about how to navigate these courses, which courses might be better suited to my interests and strengths and talents. Because as I've said, I like people who have long gone through the process, they have a lot of advice and knowledge and wisdom to shed that might be valuable for you. And it's so awesome to kind of have that support system by your side. So finding those links and finding those people in your network really helps, I think. And kind of along the same lines was living away from home. It was my first time living away from home, kind of having to take care of myself. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people. But it's nice to have people. It's nice to realize that there are so many people who are in the same boat as you, and you're in this together, really. So it's nice. It's good to lean on each other for support and to kind of speak about the challenges as they're happening and not just in hindsight. So it's hard, but I think there's a lot of good comes out of opening up about your struggles while they're happening, and kind of finding the people who are also in the same boat, and realizing your mutual struggles and offering advice on how you can help each other out, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question, Angela. But yeah, I hope everyone has their questions answered at this point. If not, feel free to reach out again, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have. But I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you all soon. All right, bye everyone.